Hello beautiful people and welcome to another video. Today I'm working on this old box trunk thingy. I'm not sure what this is, but the goal is to try and make it a bit nicer and potentially use it as a blanket box / coffee table for my own house. As you can see, the condition of this box is really rough. There are hundreds of rusty nails in it and some of them are really crooked and it just doesn't look nice. Lots of holes and cracks, and those pine boards that someone used to make this box, they're just not good quality, and if I wanted to make it look perfect, I would have had to take in so much material off that there wouldn't have been much left of this box. And yes, there was woodworm damage as well. So, because this was an old piece and I didn't really know anything about it, I tested to make sure there was no lead in this paint before I tried to sand it. Unfortunately, it didn't seem like sanding was gonna do it.
Computer says no.
So since that didn't work, I thought maybe my belt sander would do it. Fortunately, I always have plan B and plan C and sometimes plan D. And it seemed that this paint, whatever it was, responded very well to this paint stripper and it came off no problem. But because these boards were so uneven, cracked and full of holes and imperfections, there was lots of paint stuck in all those crevices, so stripping alone was not enough. It's funny that every time I think that I have a quick and easy project and that I would be able to turn it around in a couple of days, it takes me a week. Well, this wasn't quite that long, but it was a bit frustrating because it didn't quite go according to plan. But I can always count on my friendly neighborhood cats to come and cheer me up, and that's what Rufus did. I don't know what's happened to Mia and Hugo, but it seems like the cats are rotating, and this week it's Rufus's time, so he's been keeping me company. Normally when you apply paint stripper, there is a very sticky residue that's left afterwards that you need to remove, but also deactivate the paint stripper with mineral spirit. There wasn't really much left of it in this case, so whatever this combination of the paint and the paint stripper was, it worked very well. Other than the fact that there was a lot of paint left in the grain and all those holes and crevices as I mentioned. I used some steel wool and mineral spirit to give it a final clean, and I let it dry before I sanded off the remaining paint. Unlike the pull on the lid, the hinges were actually brass, so even though they didn't look like much, I knew I would be able to make them basically as new, so I kept them. And here's what I was thinking at this point. Because I was not going to be able to make it look perfect, I decided to use it to my advantage, and by using wire wheel and nylon brushes, I removed the software portion of the wood, which basically made it look 3D, and it accentuated the look of the grain. That took a while, but I thought it was a good way to deal with what I had, and it also allowed me to try something I had never tried before, which you will see in a little bit. And because there was some visible woodworm damage, I wanted to stay on the safe side and I just sprayed the entire box. I normally don't start a project unless I feel like I have a vision and I know what I want to do with it. With this one, I really wasn't sure because, as I mentioned, the quality of this box was just so poor and I didn't want to completely redo it. So I did struggle a little bit, if I'm honest.
Two 2,000 years later.
My original plan was to actually fill in every single hole from the woodworm damage with resin, but that didn't work very well for various reasons. Partially just because the resin would sink to the bottom, I couldn't really tell how deep the holes were, and I would have to top them up many times, and that would have taken forever. I didn't want to do it, so I tried super glue. That didn't work very well either. So my last plan was to cut a thick slice of veneer and to cover it up. So that's basically what I did. I just found a piece of 2x4, I think, and I made sure that it looked like the rest of the wood on the lid, and I used my table saw to cut a thick piece of veneer to cover the damage. And because it was pine, it looked very similar to the rest of the wood, so I just glued it on, clamped it, and left it to dry. I'm not really sure if it was so dirty or if it was stained inside, but I didn't like it, so I wanted to sand it a little bit, but keep the rustic look.
A few moments later.
As always, I wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you wonderful and generous people for supporting my channel, especially to the members and those who use my links for Buy Me a Coffee, my Amazon wishlist, and those who click on the Super Thanks button. That means a lot and I really appreciate it. I get lots of comments about the products that I use, so I've made a list of my favorite products and most of them are available on Amazon. There's a link in the description, so if you want to, you can have a look and maybe you'll find what you're looking for. I was able to make the brass hinges look very nice and pretty much new, but as far as the pull that was attached to the lid, it was very cheap and basic and I was not going to keep it, so I wanted to find something new, especially that the box was just so plain and not interesting visually. I knew that that would be the main focus of this whole piece. I know what you're thinking, but don't worry, I'm not just going to stain it black. But because of what I've done with the wire brush and the nylon brushes, it created a depth. So by staining this black, I'll be able to remove the very superficial layer of wood from those ridges, and it will make it look even more like wood grain than what it was, if it makes sense. You'll see in a minute. Because this is wood stain, not paint, you can clearly see the wood grain, but as I mentioned, because the brushes that I use created peaks and troughs, if you will, the stain will sit in the troughs and I'm going to sand off the very superficial layer of the peaks, and that will make a contrast between those two tones and make it look more like wood grain than it originally did, if it makes sense. I mean, these are just old pine boards, so there's just so much you can do with it. And now you can see what I was talking about. I hope this makes sense now. The boards were pretty loose, so I used some vintage nails to fix that. And as you can see, there's some pretty deep scratches, but this is the bottom of the box, so you won't be able to see that. And because they were very deep, as I said, I would have had to remove a lot of material to get rid of them. As I mentioned, I'm not sure at this point if this is going to be a coffee table or a blanket box or both. I thought that adding these very nice brass casters would give it more functionality, but also would make it look very cool. It's almost time for the final inspection, so Rufus came by to check up on the progress and probably mostly to get a snack. I couldn't quite make up my mind as far as the finish, so after applying a couple of coats of semi-matte, I actually decided on satin. I put on the hinges and I used my favorite orange scented beeswax for the inside, and it gave it a very nice, rich and warm tone, and I was very happy with it. And no, I'm not going to keep that pull. This is just one of many that I tried. As I mentioned, I didn't really have a vision for this project, so this is just another thing that I tried. I used some gilding wax for the edges, and after thinking about it for a little bit, I thought it was a bit too shiny, so I went over it with black wax and I just played with it until I was kind of happy with it. But because the end grain of those boards was just really ugly and in a bit rough condition, I just didn't like it and I didn't know what to do with it. And I'm actually kind of thinking about using some brass corner pieces, but I didn't have any at the time, so I might actually add it on. And as far as the wax, the gold wax or the black wax, you can easily remove it with mineral spirit, so I'll think about it and I might just wipe it off in the future. And this is the final pull. I completely forgot I had it. It's absolutely beautiful, it's vintage, and it was perfect for this project. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Before you see the final photos, thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video.